The SEGA Game Gear, the gaming handheld known for its sizing issues. In 1990, it was too big, making people wonder why you had a massive slab in your pants, and in 2020, it's far too small, making people wonder why your pet hedgehog needs a Game Gear. Size issues aside, it boasted a game library similar in count to the Nintendo 64 and offered quite a few game exclusives that have since been lost in time. Now in this video series, I take a look back at games that have been lost in time that I feel need to be remastered or ported to modern platforms. Not everyone has the luxury of dabbling in flea markets, digging up for these old gems, or having to sacrifice 6 AA batteries to play a game for an hour or two. There are just so many exclusives for this handheld platform that we might need a few videos to cover it, but for today, let's look at just a few Game Gear exclusives I'd love to see ported or remade on modern platforms. Starting off is my childhood hero and the game that made me want a Game Gear, Sonic Triple Trouble. With the recent success of Sonic Mania, it would be the perfect time to revive this old Sonic gem, which released at the peak of Sonic craze, right after Sonic 3 in 1994. The game featured the foundational characters of the franchise, including Sonic, Tails, Metal Sonic, Dr. Robotnik before he was changed to the far worse Dr. Eggman moniker, and of course everyone's favorite asshole, Knuckles. I hated this laugh animation so much as a kid. This chump would constantly mess up your mission to defeat Dr. Robotnik, and he'd just toss his head back and laugh at you. What a dick. And the game also introduced a new character, Treasure Hunter Nick the Weasel, who was another asshole that laughed at you. And they wonder why gamer rage is a thing now. There were just so many unique aspects of this game that would translate so well in a Sonic Mania 2 of some kind. For example, the plain bonus level, which, by the way, why is Sonic always looking back at you like he has trust issues? Just look at that look. Those eyes, they've seen something, and they don't trust anymore. What happened, Sonic? What happened? This game also had some cool levels that could really be fleshed out in a remaster, like this very short train segment. Why haven't we seen Sonic in more train levels anyways? Alright, the last one was in Sonic 06, so I guess that kind of killed it for good. Anyways, if we're going to talk about a potential Sonic Mania 2, which would include Sonic Triple Trouble inspirations, it would make perfect sense to also bring back the other exclusive Sonic Game Gear platformers, such as Sonic Chaos, the original Sonic the Hedgehog, and heck, even Tails' Adventure. Seriously though, there were so many good aspects to the Sonic games on the Game Gear that captured the Sonic craze of the 90s, it would be a shame to have it lost to the flow of time. We've seen many of these titles ported before on the GameCube under the Sonic Gems collections, but that in and of itself is also lost to time. You can't get a GameCube anymore that easily. Let's get a Sonic Retro Mega Pack collection or something that includes everything. In fact, as a side note, games like Sonic Chaos have become so popular amongst fans that a fan project launched reviving this game a la Sonic Mania, and the announcement trailer for this is already at nearly 500,000 views. Let's not forget about our cute two-tailed sidekick Tails. To be fair, Tails' Adventure has been ported plenty of times, being included in Sonic Adventure DX, again in Sonic Gems collection, and last released on the 3DS. Tails' Adventure was a much slower paced game and more akin to a Metroidvania. Instead of just running to the right and collecting rings, as Tails you would take your time exploring levels and finding new items that would open up new parts of the stage to explore, like a Metroidvania. Maybe Sega could develop some modern Metroidvania games through Tails using this original concept as inspiration. Come on Sega, make it happen. You need some Metroidvanias. We all need some Metroidvanias. Next up is one of Sega's most popular franchises, Shinobi, and it had 2 entries on the Game Gear, including Shinobi and Shinobi 2, The Silent Fury. The original has managed to be revived a few times already on the 3DS Virtual Console and again on these Game Gear Minis. However, the sequel remains trapped in 1992 on the original Game Gear. It's unfortunate as the game plays as a direct sequel story-wise and offers new ninja abilities and weapons. For example, the red ninja can knock back boulders, the green ninja can double jump, and so on. As for the story, players must visit 5 stages to collect a different elemental crystal from each one. Players can play the first 4 stages in any order they wish, unlocking new playable ninjas after each one. Then, once all levels are complete, the 5th and final stage opens up. It's a fun little game and a small piece of Shinobi history that deserves to stand alongside its predecessor. Next up, I'd like to see the 3 X-Men games ported over as some kind of X-Men Game Gear trilogy collection. Sure, some titles here are better than others, but just like Star Wars, you usually buy, the films bundled with the other garbage like Rise of Skywalker. Now in the 90s, X-Men was a huge franchise, being amplified by the cartoon series, which spanned a whopping 5 seasons. The franchise launched several game titles for all the major platforms, including 3 on the Game Gear. The first 2, X-Men and X-Men Game Master's Legacy, were both well received, while the third one, X-Men Mojo World, ironically, it lost its mojo.
I've lost my mojo!
In the first installment, players play as either Cyclops or Wolverine, working to save the other X-Men captured by Magneto. As new X-Men characters are saved, players can then play as them, including Storm, Rogue, Psylocke, Nightcrawler, and even Iceman. The bulk of the gameplay is your basic action platformer with different X-Men using different abilities. For fans of the franchise though, it's really all you need for a classic portable platformer. The second installment has a similar concept to the first, in which you start with 2 playable X-Men, Cyclops and Storm, and then you unlock several others later on. The gameplay is quite similar to the first, though with some added level of polish. And the graphics, they also received quite an improvement, with the sprites looking far better than the first game. And then there's Mojo World, which again has the same type of gameplay as the other 2, but somehow bad game design. Strange, considering it looks like the same game designers were involved in all 3 games. I guess by the third one, they were just sick of the franchise and said to hell with it, we're done. Alright, now let's open up a mess of a box from another very popular franchise, Shining Force. This franchise, specifically Shining, is huge, spanning dozens of games, platforms, and even game genres. It's one of Sega's most iconic franchises, and when it came to the Game Gear, it featured 3 titles: Shining Force Gaiden, Shining Force The Sword of Hyjah, and Shining Force Gaiden Final Conflict. All 3 games are available on the Game Gear Micro, but screw that platform. If the screen is under 2 inches, it doesn't count as a real gaming platform. That's my rule. Now for the sake of this video, we'll leave out Shining Force The Sword of Hyjah, as that title was ported to the 3DS Virtual Console and can be bought and played there today. As for Shining Force Gaiden and Final Conflict, they're an old school tactical RPG that was unfortunately only released in Japan. The gameplay is very much what you'd expect to see in a turn-based tactical RPG. Player characters and enemies are laid out on a grid, taking turns moving and attacking each other until one side is vanquished, hopefully the enemy side. The fights are tied together with a story. In the case of Shining Force Gaiden, it continues the events from Shining Force after 20 years have passed. For anyone who wants to take on everything the Shining Force franchise has to offer, and especially given the plot-heavy nature of these games, I'd say they're must-ports for North American audiences. And the last title I want to discuss today is an absolute must for video game and pop culture preservation. Donald No Magical World, or as it's often translated to, Ronald in the Magical World. For some reason, fast food franchise mascots were quite popular in the 90s, with many brands using video games to increase their reach. We saw Pepsi do it with Pepsi Man and Cool Spot, Coca-Cola did it with Coca-Cola Kid, and McDonald's had a bunch of them across several platforms. Even more strange, some of these were great games, including Ronald in the Magical World. Despite this being a handheld fast food game, it still had cutscenes, the beginning one being a full 3-minute time hog. I could order a Big Mac in less time than that. It also included well fleshed out platforming mechanics and even a story. So basically, Grimace finds a mysterious box, they open it, and Ronald's friends get sucked up into some kind of magical world. He must then go rescue his friends. You know, it sounds like the usual 90s drug trip inspired stories. Despite McDonald's being an American icon, this game was only ever released in Japan for some reason, making it that much more important to re-release this game for the Western audience. And while there are many more exclusive titles on the Game Gear to discuss, and even more on other platforms, that's going to be it for today's video. So please let me know which Game Gear games you feel have been lost in time, and until next time, keep it classy.